Sonic Super Special Issue 9. We start out seeing Sonic Tails, who looks really weird here, and the others as kids playing in the winter, with Antoine apparently being pelted by snowballs until he would cry uncle, as I wonder why he continued to hang out with these guys, since they do nothing but bully him. What does he mean by, "this is my Waterloo"? We also see Rotor decide not to be called Boomer anymore, not because Boomer makes him sound like a terrorist, but because he thinks he's getting too old to be called by a nickname. They finished with Antoine being covered in snow, with Rotor joking that he looks like an ice cream sundae. Yeah, I can understand just Sonic bullying Antoine, but even the ones who are supposed to be nice? Tails, Rotor, Sally? It's always been an out-of-character moment for them, especially when we aren't even told what Antoine did to deserve it. Unfortunately, Rosie, who is drawn so different that I didn't recognize her, gets hit by a snowball, which worries the kids. But Sally's crying causes Rosie to forgive her, and I assumed it was just to manipulate her at first until I saw the tears. He's also explained that Sally had been trying to have fun with her friends to keep their minds off the king being thrown to his own asylums. Rosie decides that Sally and her friends should go ice skating on the frozen wishing well, and they start playing hockey there. I can't help but wonder why this downtime, quality time between the freedom fighters is happening when they were kids, and we never saw this during the peacetime arc when Robotnik wasn't there to bother them. Anyways, Sonic was moving so fast that not only was he cheating and not letting his friends play, but the friction he caused from his moving fast melted the ice. They then try to get some water from the frozen well and find a ring inside it, and Sonic asks if it's worth anything and they should check it out. You'd think in this universe everyone would know what rings are. For some bizarre reason, then Sally falls into a portal to the top of a roller coaster. I'm gonna bring up Sonic again. Why did he make it so that Sally would be transported here when that's totally pointless? She then sees her father with his face made of green crystal, and somehow recognizes it as her father who's there for some reason and on his own asylums instead of thinking he was just a statue. It then crashes through the crystal, and yet doesn't seem to react to it with absolute horror or anything. Then we see some copies of 3 freedom fighters, including Rotor, saying weird things inside of colored squares, and the real Rotor states the obvious that they've all been transported to some kind of weird zone. Then one of Sonic's friends, though I can't tell if it's Sally or Tails because of the helmet and perspective, says that the fact that they're all stuck together might be a sign that they're meant to stay as a team. Even though Sonic hasn't stuck with them, so what sign? And we see the ancient walkers say that the young chosen one is right. I guess that's Tails then. Then Tails says, "I wonder what happened to Sonic." It's such an amazing coincidence that he said that exact mimetic line before Sonic Adventure even came out. Meanwhile, Sonic had been pulled into another colorful zone, and I have to wonder why Sonic saw the point in sending him here. He says to himself that what none of his friends know is that he's been in another zone before, with Ray and Mighty. I can assume he didn't tell his friends about it because they might not believe him. Sonic then says that this zone looks brand new, still under construction. That's pretty interesting. It being brand new, and yet there's still breathable air and grass and everything. It is a magical zone after all. Sonic decides to collect some rings so that he could potentially meet the actual creator of the zone and ask how it's done. Why would he think getting rings would let him do that? And why would he think the creator would agree to that? Unfortunately, he somehow finds Robotnik here, and also he's so young at this point that he calls him Julian instead. Unfortunately, Robotnik doesn't fill in the plot hole and tell us why we're here right away. And that just makes me wonder, why didn't the Zone Club like Sonic throw Robotnik out of this zone with his orange spear thing, like he did with the female Robotnik? Sonic, while dealing with Eggman, shows on something new he's been working on called the Sonic Spin, making this the first time chronologically he did this in an important instance. And he uses the Sonic Spin to damage the hyperdrive and overload Eggman's machine, while Robotnik reveals that the reason he came here was to encounter the zone's creative force, because it's a primal source of power for him. That still doesn't explain why he was able to come here, when he didn't invent his interdimensional transporter thing that he only used once to go to Anti-Mobius until years later. Sonic then returns home with the rest of his friends also coincidentally returning home, and he throws the ring back into the well. I guess that's how he knew to come looking for it to make a wish against Eggman that one time. I still can't believe one ring sent into another zone though, when it's supposed to be 50 rings that do that. This whole zone transportation was just pointless. Good, there's another story after this. We see Sally when her parents were still around, with all of them going on a trip together. Sally's pretty excited because she never gets to be alone with her father. Her father then says that it's because being a king takes time, but promptly contradicts himself by saying that he can take a vacation whenever he wants, meaning he should have more time to spend with her. Sally wastes her time by reminding us that Sir Charles is Sonic's uncle to Chuck in a text box that she wouldn't have said logically since the king already knows that. As I expected, this is a story about Sally and the king's trip to Angel Island, where they'll spend the next few days exploring it. It's really weird to see Sally so excited and curious, asking a million questions a minute and expecting an answer for all of them. I know she's young, but still. The king tells her that protocol requires that he would pay his respects to the guardian of the island, disappointing Sally because he said he wouldn't have any business meeting on their trip before he leaves without her. I don't understand why he would logically go without her, leaving her all alone, especially after what happened to his son and wife as far as he knows. This seems incredibly arbitrary, like it only happened for the sake of getting her and Knuckles alone together. Sally thinks to herself with her arms crossed that when she's in charge of Mobius, she won't let her royal duties interfere with having fun. Yeah, right. It's sad to think about, actually. She didn't think her older self would end up like that. I wouldn't exactly describe Sally as fun-loving. Also, in charge of Mobius? And later, ruler of planet Mobius. I thought King Acorn only ruled the Acorn Kingdom, not the whole world. Especially since there are other countries in the world, like the one ruled by the Iron King and Queen, that the Acorn Kingdom isn't ruling. She then thinks that she won't let anyone sneak up behind her in the bushes, and warns Knuckles that she's been field combat trained since before she could walk. Makes sense that the king would want to take extra care to make sure his daughter will be able to protect herself after what he thinks happened to his wife and son. What doesn't make sense is the idea that you could combat train a baby who can't even walk yet. A baby wouldn't be able to be trained, let alone put through dangerous training like that when it couldn't possibly know what it was expected to do or what was going on. It goes from a moment of high tension where we had every indication that Sally and Knuckles' first encounter would be rough, to Knuckles suddenly just having an annoyed talk with her while Sally smiles at him and introduces herself like a friend. This is so jarring and out of left field. Sally learns that Knuckles is violating one of his strict apprenticeship rules just by talking to her. Sally has a good point. Knuckles really can't compare guarding one little island to ruling the whole planet. With that, they finally have a fight, which really should have happened the instant Knuckles found her, considering he was so paranoid at seeing intruders show up in the first place. But instead the fight starts after they learn who they are. I do really like how Knuckles got to stand up to her for pushing him and stuff, saying, "Keep your hands and your snotty remarks about my home to yourself," and pushed her right back. It's good to see Sally getting some consequences and comeuppance to being stood up to. Some people would have you believe this never happens, and it certainly doesn't happen enough. Sally shows compassion by trying to save Knuckles after she thinks she knocked him over the edge, but then he glides just fine and ends up knocking over a tree trying to hurt her, and panics because he damaged a part of the island's ecosystem. It's just one tree, relax! Are the rules really that draconianly strict? This causes Sally to have a moment of vulnerability as she starts to cry, blaming herself for everything, and feeling insecure about her ability to be a queen in the future, and saying that she can't even get along with a new friend. It's good that she has humility like that, and moments like this where she has self-doubt and guilt and worries are what help humanize her and make her feel a lot more relatable and sympathetic, as she has all this pressure on her being the future queen and doesn't think she's worthy of the title. It's much more interesting than her just being overconfident and stuck up like her very early incarnation seemed to be. With that, Sally and Knuckles make a pact to not tell anyone that Knuckles broke some stupid rules, and Locke shows up telling Knuckles that he has to recite 6 more chapters from the Book of Myths. Why is he wasting his time teaching him about myths? Sally makes such a big deal about hiding their friendship and so on, even though they've only known each other for, I don't even know how long it's been, an hour? A few minutes? And yet already she's so attached to him. Then they try really hard to make us feel sorry for Sally by saying that she's worried, based on Knuckles leaving, that this will be an omen that she'll lose her friends, teachers, or especially her father. All this just because she had to hide her friendship with one guy she literally just met. Man, she really got attached. This is so forced and sudden, and it's not like she's clinging and deprived of love and affection, which would have perfectly justified her reaction here. She's had friends her whole life. I don't even know how old she is here. Aw, it is sweet that she and her father hug, and even more sweet that her father initiated it, that it's the first thing he thought to do after reuniting with her. I wonder if he knew she was crying and blamed himself, and was feeling guilty the whole time he was gone for leaving his daughter alone. By the way, I like this design of Sally, especially with the tiara. That tiara completes it for me. She tells him that she's so glad nothing happened to him, and he reassures her like a loving father that all he did was visit the guardian of the island, Locke, who was a very nice echidna. That's nice of him to say. The next story has us see Sonic and his friends playing just outside Tails' house with a baseball being thrown at Antoine's chest by Rotor, who at the very least was aiming for Sonic, so it's not really an incident of bullying this time. Surprisingly, we meet Tails' father here, who tells them politely to be quiet and take their game someplace else, with Sally saying with an oddly cheerful smile that she forgot about his wife's condition. I'm not sure if I'm okay with the idea that Tails has loving biological parents. I mean, in every other continuity, he was assumed to have been abandoned by his parents for having two tails. They were ashamed of him. This version of Tails is very, very lucky that he had parents who were accepting of him. It seems to stretch believability. Then Sally explains that no, Tails' mother isn't sick, she's pregnant. So why did Rotor not know about that? Is Tails' mother Rosemary? That's not a name, that's a spice. Anyways, Rosemary is unhappy that her husband still has to leave for duty, even though her baby could come any time now. It looks like her husband, Amadeus, is dressed like a soldier, like Antoine, and has a patch like Patch. Already he doesn't feel too original. It's revealed that he's the second in command of the Royal Guard, and he's been put in charge of the desolation of the Mobian military. Oh yeah, that ridiculously stupid decree. Huh, I didn't know the experiment that got Sonic's father roboticized was classified to the public. Well, it's not anymore, since Robotnik's biography broadcasted it to Knothole. But yeah, this is just wasting our time reminding us of stuff we already knew for a long time. Wait, the Prowers don't know if their kid's gonna be a boy or a girl? Wouldn't they have gone to the doctor and learned about it already? Oh, good. Amadeus tells Sonic and his friends to keep an eye on the house in case his wife needs help, so it's not like he's totally leaving her without help while he'll be gone. Then we cut to Robotnik bragging about being given Chuck's old lab, and after Snively asks him if he's going to eliminate him, Robotnik says, "No, that would be far too simple." Translation, I'm an idiot. Then Amadeus witnesses Robotnik turning someone into a robot against their will, and him and Snively bragging about their plan. But of course his stupidity was his downfall, as instead of immediately using his Overlander weapon on Robotnik, he wastes a bunch of time telling him he's under arrest, and gets grabbed by a SWAT bot before he could prevent Robotnik's rise to power. So many things could have prevented that from happening. Meanwhile, predictably Rosemary goes into labor and gets taken to Dr. Quack with a wagon by Sonic, and Tails is born with Sonic and his friends there to meet him already. This is certainly unique for this continuity, that's for sure. In most continuities, Sonic found Tails in the woods when he was little, being bullied by people on an island for having two tails. But in this continuity, Tails never went through any of that at all, and everyone seems to barely react to the fact that he has two tails. Robotnik then shows up, and I'm very uncomfortable seeing that even Robotnik was present at Tails' birth. And he lies that Amadeus was in a contaminated room and has to be kept sterile so there's no risk to the baby. They look so smug and condescending while they're saying this too. Why does anyone trust them? Turns out Amadeus really is here, but I guess he's been roboticized and his mask and stuff are there to hide it. That's why instead of holding his son, he emotionlessly walks away and causes his wife to cry. I guess she doesn't consider that maybe he doesn't want to get the baby contaminated? Dr. Quack explains his suspicious behavior away as he's not used to being a father yet, and the king, I assume, makes up a lie to reassure her. Yep, roboticized, as I expected. So why didn't Tails' father get his free will back later? Was he out of the country when the Ultimate Annihilator was activated? It is pretty sweet that Sonic picks up and hugs Tails when he was first born. Although again, it's weird to me that he knew him for literally his entire life. The first story was by Mike Gallagher. It went from the Freedom Fighters playing hockey together, or rather watching while Sonic played the whole game himself like a selfish dick, to a complete waste of time as they all get transported to two wacky zones just because they found one ring in a well. Why did this even happen? This is another reason they probably shouldn't have tried to introduce the Zone Cops so late into the comic, because now I can question why the Zone Cops didn't show up and immediately warp them back to their homes, and why Sonic decided to make them come to these zones in the first place. Especially Eggman, since Sonic dealt with a female Robotnik in the same situation right away, but this one is allowed to do whatever he wants. The second story, also by Mike Gallagher, was a closer look at something we already know about, Sally and Knuckles meeting each other as kids. But to prevent it from being totally pointless, there is some new information. They had a fight that led to Sally having a moment of vulnerability where she felt terrible about herself and what had happened, and it's good to let her have moments like this to make her sympathetic. What I can't understand is why Sally suddenly thinks of Knuckles as such a close friend and is really upset at leaving him when, for all I know, they've been with each other for only a few minutes and barely even had a conversation. And already Sally's so emotionally attached to him that she starts to get an irrational fear that she'll lose a lot of her loved ones just because she couldn't hang out with him. This is so forced and out of nowhere. And the final story, also by Mick Gallagher, was easily the good one of the three. It shows you what happened to Tails' father, and Tails being born with Sonic and his friends all present at it, something that's pretty unique for the Sonic franchise, contradicting every single other account of Tails' backstory. Looks like he's never been bullied at all. It really speaks to how open-minded Sonic is that when he sees his two tails, he simply comments that he was born with both of his parents' tails. What happened to Amadeus is pretty tragic, although one, with his eye patch like Patch and being a soldier like Antoine's father, he doesn't feel very original as a character, so I really don't see the point of him even existing. And two, his being roboticized was his own damn fault, because if he had just immediately shot Robotnik the minute he found out his schemes, like a soldier would have done, he could have prevented everything he would end up doing later. But instead, he hesitated and wasted a whole bunch of time saying to a major villain that he's gonna arrest him, and ended up roboticized for his genre blindness. Hard for me to feel sorry for him with that in mind. Next up is Sonic Super Special Issue 10.